It's weird to think. Yeah. So yeah, I talked to an Air Force recruiter, and they convinced me that the military was the best option for me to really show I could be whatever it was my parents and my friends and my family wanted me to be. And I was like, okay. So I did. I joined. I left college, never finished anything, didn't even withdraw properly, but mostly didn't want to show my face. Did not want to show my face at college after showing up to class naked. Um, so yeah, I mean, I left. I joined the military. I went to basic. I went to basic in 2000. And I did. I did 4 years active duty. 9/11 happened. I deployed. And that whole experience allowed me to shove, shove all of my reality, all of my existence deep inside. Ignore it completely, actually. It was a good distraction. Now, personally, I joined the military figuring, well, I mean, most airmen and soldiers and sailors and Marines don't have a very high life expectancy. Fuck, I was depending on it. But it didn't happen. And while I was in the Air Force, I got married. I got married the first time. And I had my oldest son, Hunter. And the whole time I was married, it's not that I didn't love my partner. She was a good person. She was a good person. I cared about her. I had a lot in common with her. But I struggled. I struggled greatly during our marriage because my identity felt broken. I felt broken. Sure, I had a lot of great times with my first wife, but I never felt deeply connected to her in a way that made sense. My connection to her always felt strange, and I couldn't figure out what the hell it was or why. I also felt deeply connected to most of the men I was serving with, which was confusing. I think she picked up on these things, and I'm pretty sure it hurt her feelings. And I'm pretty sure I was a complete asshole about it too, because how dare you question my masculinity? How dare you question all these things that I'm pretending to be? Fake anger. And that I am absolutely sure I would stake most of my life savings on it. Every trans person has done. Fake anger. Pretend anger to go along with our pretend facade. How dare you? I'm just as masculine as the next person. Yeah, that was an absolute lie. I don't like pink and girly things, and no, I would never wear dresses, and I've even made the stupid comments, barring being kicked off of TikTok for using these. And you're like, oh, that's gay. Hell, I was probably the worst offender of making stupid statements like that. Because I had to. It's like that old show, Keeping Up Appearances. I had to keep up those appearances throughout my military career. So when my marriage came to a freaking crashing halt, my life did too. I was like, because my first wife wasn't going to stand for that shit. She wasn't. She left. Rightfully so. I got out of the Air Force. I did my 4 years, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I need to kind of recalibrate, re-elaborate. I went back to school. I finished my first bachelor's degree, and I got my airframe and power plant. I was like, all right, life is back on track. um, I'm ready to kind of start over. Well, I mean, I'd gotten some good work, but I also missed being in the military, so I went to go back. I went back in the military. I went to go back in the Air Force. The Air Force said, no, we're not taking prior enlisted. I was like, well, shit. Well, the Army recruiter was across the hall, and he's like, hey, you got your bachelor's degree? He's like, yeah. He's like, you're aviation? I'm like, yeah. He's like, come here. And I was like, listen, bro. I've already been in. I don't need the spiel. I already know how fucked the military is. Just, what do you need? How fast can I freaking get promoted? So I joined. I went back in the military. This time Army instead of Air Force. And yeah, I spent most of my time in aviation. And I loved it. Aviation in the Army was great. And I've been in the Army ever since. Now, that being said, I got married again. I was active duty and I got married. And I thought, sure, this will work this time. Hi, Anthony Garcia. Like, this will work great. She was nice, sweet, mildly crazy. But we all are. And I had my second son. So now I've got two boys. Very, very, very excited that I had my second boy. I was like, oh, yay. But this time, watching my second son be born, something happened. Something big mentally happened. And I wasn't really sure of what. I watched my son be born. And I had to be excused. Not because I was grossed out. Not because I was sick. Watching the experience of birth never bothered me. None of that ever bothered me. I had to excuse myself because I felt a wave of depression come over, and I cried. I stood in the hallway of the hospital, and I cried for about 30 minutes. And the nurses even stopped, like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And I said, I'm actually fine. I don't know why I'm crying. Sarah, my wife, is fine. I couldn't understand why I was crying. I understand now. I know why I was crying now. I didn't then. And the amount of crying that I was doing obviously got back to my wife at the time. And I think that sowed the seeds of her being very upset with me for the emotional experience that I had caused. She thought that I was crying because I didn't want our child. She still probably believes that. She probably thinks that I cried that entire time because I didn't want our son. That was not it. But that was an egg crack moment for me. That was a big egg crack moment for me. sat there and I thought to myself, why am I being such a baby about this? Why am I reacting the way I am? And I could never have an answer back then. I tried. I tried to come up with whatever excuse I could in my head that was going to make me happy and, well, appease my wife at the time, who was obviously very distraught that I was crying about everything at that point. Dr. Diarrhea style, shut your cocksucker. How about that? So I want to make this clear to the folks who are watching on my streams and who are watching on TikTok. If you come in here and you say some nasty, negative, transphobic bullshit, not only am I going to block you, I will have your account erased. So knock it off. Enjoy the show or move on. That's my policy. Now, for obvious reasons, my second marriage didn't work. It didn't. Between that and obviously me struggling through my own issues, she got bitter and she got angry. And I'm not mad at her. I couldn't possibly be mad at her. She has a right to be upset. She does. She still is. I'm not allowed to see my middle son now that I've come out. So when that marriage ended, I volunteered for another deployment. I was struggling very, very hard at this point. Struggling very hard. I volunteered for another deployment and finally got one. My objective for deploying, again, was like, I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. Every single dangerous QRF, every single dangerous mission that we were going into anywhere that could possibly deemed a hot zone, or if I felt like, as per usual, DIA's intelligence was garbage, and that we were definitely going to run into hostile forces or whatever, I did it. I was like, I'll go. I volunteered so freaking often for some of the craziest, stupidest shit. They made me go on R&R. Like, no, this is like your 9th QRF in as many days. Go take 2 days off and just like relax. Go to Green Beans, get some freaking coffee, hang out at the DFAC, whatever. Just go away. They're like, no, take some time. And that's not what I wanted. That wasn't helping my mental aptitude. That wasn't making me feel better, because when I had time, I thought about my situation more. And the more I thought about my situation, the angrier and more depressed I got. How I managed to survive that deployment, I am still not sure. I'm really not. I came home in 2011. It was a 15-month deployment. And I got home. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is an opportunity for me to do a little bit of self-discovery. And I tried. I tried to do self-discovery. And I got really depressed. I worked. I found, contract work immediately after getting home. Was making pretty damn good money. I was making great money. But I was really lonely. I had secluded myself on purpose from all of my friends. I had secluded myself from my coworkers. I had secluded myself from my military unit. I dropped out of active duty and went back to National Guard, so I only had to be there 1 week in a month. I didn't want to be around anyone. That's what it boiled down to. I did not want to be around anybody. I had begun the process of eliminating myself from other people's lives. Now, for those that know the signs, that was a key indicator of what was going through my head. I wasn't looking for attention. I wasn't looking for anything. I had begun very methodically and very slowly selling off all of my property. I'd gotten rid of most of my furniture, almost all of my belongings. My property was up for sale. I had sold my Harley Davidson. I was slowly getting rid of things, and I made sure I did it in a way that nobody would notice. Nobody would ask questions. Like, hey, I noticed you sold your entire fucking living room last week. No, I sold a chair. And then I sold a table. And then I sold the couch. And eventually all I had was a mattress. I'd gotten rid of just about everything else. I had my mattress and I had my car. And I was happy. Well, happy in the sense that nobody had questioned anything yet. So, November 2nd, 2012, I was sitting in my big empty house. It had been a year since I'd basically gotten home from my deployment. I wasn't any happier. I was no closer to figuring out what I was suffering from. And I had distanced myself from everybody. I had not talked to my parents in 6 months. I had not spoken with any friends that were close to me in almost a year. Nobody was really questioning where I was. Nobody was questioning anything I was doing. So, I went to my empty house. I went through some boxes. And I remember finding what I was looking for. I found an old 38 special that was given to me by a friend's parents. Now, this was a friend I'd known for a very long time who was a police officer. He died on duty, and I got his 38 special. And I took that weapon out of my box, and I sat on my mattress in my empty house with nobody around. And I loaded 2 rounds in the weapon. And I waited till it was evening. Not like late night where people would be home trying to sleep, but evening, maybe people are out. It was a weekend. People would be enjoying themselves. And yeah, I sat on that mattress and I picked up that 38 special and I put it in my mouth. And I thought for a little while. I was like, well, shit. What if somebody hears? God forbid someone heard. They send someone over here and they save me because I didn't want that. So I thought, well, I'm going to fire a test shot. See if anybody calls the cops. So I pulled it out of my mouth. I aimed it at the ceiling and I shot into the ceiling. It was louder than fuck. Scared the ever-living crap out of me. But that tends to happen when you fire a weapon inside a closed room. And then I just sat there and I waited. I waited for 45 minutes. And nobody showed up. Nobody seemed to have been the wiser. And I had basically confirmed, good, that's it then. I put it back in my mouth and I was about to pull the trigger. And the fucking doorbell rang and I was like, damn it. So I put the 38 away. I went and answered the door. And it was my friends. It was my friend Adam. My friend Adam and my friend Mike. And they're like, hey, it was your birthday. And we wanted to come down and visit you for your birthday. Let's go out. Let's come on. Let's go out and drink. Let's go downtown. You know, Austin's a great place to be this time of year. I was like, ugh. I was like, guys, I really don't want to go anywhere. I'm feeling really, really shitty right now. And he goes, come on, we'll go down there. The colleges are all back in session. All the girls are going to be out. I'm like, obviously, in my mind, the last thing I wanted. I had not had a drop of alcohol since before I deployed. So, like, going on 3 some odd years as pretty much a teetotaler. I was like, fine. So they convinced me to go downtown. And I did. Now, I had every intention of finishing what I started as soon as the night was over. And I remember we went downtown, and Austin is a beautiful, fun city to be in November. The weather's perfect. It's not cold, but it's not hot. And yes, college, UT, is back in session, so sure, 4th, 5th, and 6th Streets are just loaded with very good-looking people. And we drove down there, and I was like, all right, you know, we'll have some fun. And I remember we ended up at Fado, which I don't think is there anymore. And we were at Fado, which is on 4th Street, right across from, surprise, surprise, the gay district. And that's where I felt the most comfortable. Now, I sat there and I drank my fair share of Guinness. And I just remember sitting there still being very depressed and very upset and angry and obviously really wanting to go home and finish what I started. The guys weren't really making me feel any better. Because how could they? They had no idea what was wrong. And well, fuck, I didn't have any idea what was wrong. And then she walked in. I remember sitting outside because I smoked back then. And I saw her walk in. Beautiful, stunning, amazing eyes. And the first thing that went through my head is like, jailbait. Absolute jailbait. But my friends saw me looking at her, were like, you should go talk to her. I'm like, are you out of your mind? She looks like she's 19 and she's using a fake ID. Get the hell out of here. Thank God she wasn't. And they had harassed me enough that I got off my ass and I went over and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to go talk to her. And I did. And I embarrassed myself thoroughly. Because I can't imagine being more fucking awkward. And I went to the bartender and was like, hey, let me get 2 Guinnesses. The bartender's like, okay. So gives me 2 Guinnesses, and I walk up to this girl, and I'm like, hey, I got you a drink. And she's like, oh, I have one already. I looked down, she got a full freaking beer in her hand. I'm like, crap. So I was like, well, you can have it anyway. Thanks for chatting with me. I'll catch you later. And I just walked away and I sat down. That's my friends and like, that was lame. I'm just like, shut up, all right? I'm not in the mood for you. And she eventually walked over because I guess maybe she sensed or saw something in me. And she's like, hey, can I sit down? I was like, yeah, I would love it if you did. And we hit it off. We hit it off immediately. Now, that beautiful woman that walked in the bar saved my life. Now, my friends had a hand in it too. They get just as much credit, but this woman saved my life. She goes, you have very pretty eyes. And I was like, thank you. No one's ever told me that before. She's like, no, your lashes are long and they're very beautiful and they're stunning. I was like, thank you. We have been inseparable since then. That woman is my wife. She has admitted, even recently, that she knew then. Maybe not so much specifically, but she knew. And she stayed anyway. Folks, that's love. If there ever was any evidence or proof to support the statement that love knows no gender, love knows no sex, this is it. My wife saved my life. I was so happy that any idolation I had was gone. I thought, if this person can love this broken thing, because I was honest with her. I told her, I was like, I'm very depressed. I am not in a good place. I am not going to be very much fun. And she wasn't going to have any of it. She goes, that's fine, baby. I'm here to listen. And listen, she did. I poured my heart out to her over the next course of 2 or 3 years. And she listened. I felt like there was a voice now that was listening to all the things that had been bothering me my entire life. I was able to share stories with somebody that may didn't understand, but certainly wasn't judging me for it. Instead, asking me counter questions. Well, what are you going to do about it? Maybe you should seek help. Do you want help? I can get you help. So I spent the majority of our almost 10 years together now taking small steps, learning what I was officially, gathering the braveness and courage necessary to admit to the most important person in my life, me, who I was. Convincing myself to stop lying. Ladies and gentlemen, and all of my NB listeners, the hardest person to come out to is yourself. It doesn't matter if you're still young enough that you live with your parents. It makes no difference who you're married to or how many children you have. None of that is going to be as difficult as admitting to yourself who you are and why. when you finally do, when your truth finally surfaces, it really is. It's like watching your head explode. It's scary. It's scary. It's frightful. But the weight that comes off of your shoulders when you finally realize who you are, when you can finally drop the facade, this fake thing, this ball of lies that you have created for years to appease everybody else. When all of that finally comes to a stop, it's like, I can breathe. Even before I started my physical journey, and that's only been a year ago, I'd begun my mental and my emotional journey. And that is a very, very hard thing to do. The mental and emotional journey is devastating. Because that's where you start breaking down all of these lies that you've been living. How many times I told people, no, I can never be attracted to a man. I'm only attracted to women. Because that's what good, upstanding, Catholic, conservative people do. Well, you can lie to yourself all you want. The truth always outs. The truth will out. And that's what happened. I stopped putting corks in all these feelings and I just allowed them, with my wife's assistance, to flow freely. No judgment, no counterculture, no pushing back. Just let it happen, then discuss. My only regret that I have is that I waited so fucking long to do it. The longer I look back and the more I sit and try to remember all of these details that I have buried in minutia, and I break them down and I speak to my therapist or I speak to my wife and say, hey, I remember this, and I'm trying to think, is this a real memory or is this one maybe I'm fabricating? And no, they're real. They're corroborated because I talked to people who I knew at that time, who would have seen it firsthand. I have been this way my whole life. And I've covered it up. I allowed the wrong hormones to essentially take over. Now, granted, it was the 80s, so I didn't have a lot of options. It wasn't until a little more than 2 years ago I had opted to go in for some genetic testing. My family has some genetic anomalies that are not good. Prone to colon cancer, breast cancer, brain tumors. So I wanted to get tested. I wanted to make sure that anything that could possibly go wrong in the future with my life and ruin this beautiful marriage and all of these wonderful children's lives by me not being here would be addressed as soon as possible. And I was surprised. It took them a long time to get most of the results I wanted. But I got a result back I was not expecting. And those results came back and they said, hey, you don't have XY chromosomes. What? You don't have XY chromosomes. Well, what the fuck do I have? They're XXY. And I'm like, well, what the hell is that? I didn't know what any of that shit was. I had to go look it up. So, according to my geneticist, I wasn't born male or female. It's born something else. Now, I said it's not super common, but it's not uncommon either. There are many different forms and variations of intersexed people. Now, I have since sought out even more answers to why I feel the way I do, what drives. These are really only for my edification and not to pigeonhole or describe transgendered people in general. These are more because I'm interested. I want to know. As an intersex person, I was like, well, what else was different when I was born? So I started asking my mother. She's like, I don't know. They took you from me and I didn't get you back for almost a full day. So I started looking into it, realizing that, well, my geneticist was right. It's not super common, but it's not uncommon either. Apparently, it's common enough that doctors have made it a practice that when they identify children who have androgynous sex organs, who are not entirely sure what they're supposed to be, that they force a binary on that child. Often, and by often I mean well over 99% of the time, without the mother's consent. And yeah, it took a lot of digging. It took a lot of questions, a lot of information, release forms for the New York State Department of Health, as well as Lord's Hospital in Binghamton, New York, to find out that, yes, I had androgynous sex organs. I had both. And the doctor's legitimate reason for picking the ones they did is that's the one where the pee came out of. Well, I suppose as making logical medical decisions, that's about as logical as the next one. I mean, but I'm not a doctor in that sense. I'm not a medical doctor. But yeah, that was the official notations in my medical documentation, which was sealed, by the way. So I had both. Could explain my androgynous, non-binary behavior through my teens. It's what felt most normal to me. So Mary Jane asked a very good question. I like this one. She asked, why was it sealed? So, when infants undergo medical surgeries, specifically those correcting what they consider gender and sex abnormalities, to protect the hospital and the doctors, they seal them. They are not for anyone's consumption other than historical accuracy, which means it takes an act of Congress to get them released. Even the person that had to undergo said surgeries or corrective actions are not allowed to see them, despite the fact they're about them. Now, am I going to go after Lord's Hospital or anybody else for what they did? No. Too little too late, I'm afraid. I mean, fuck, I'm over 40 years old. It makes no difference. But to make sure that society as a whole understands that this shit happens a lot. And very rarely is the mother ever consulted or her consent given in these situations. It is the doctor who takes the liberty to choose what your kid is going to have to live with for the rest of their lives, in most cases. That's awful. That's awful. No mother or child should have to succumb to that. And honestly, at least in my case, caused far more confusion later in life than was necessary. Had they just left the sex organs androgynous and allowed that child when they grew older and could make such decisions for themselves to pick which one they were more inclined to be. Now, because of my XXY and androgynous sex organs, my body naturally makes both hormones. Testosterone was the primary, but it made its own estrogen too. So, my goal in life as a transgendered woman is to reverse those things. Now, is that what makes me uniquely transgender? No. Is that what makes anybody transgender? No. It has nothing to do with it at all. There are those folks who were born XY and have everything normal and are still transgender because a lot of what we feel comes from the mind, the brain. It has nothing to do with what's downstairs. I just found it very fascinating that my body had to go through all of these things basically just to be put back. Hell, I've even thought about when I finally get my bottom surgery, which I don't have currently, would I put them back exactly the way I was born? Have both. Who knows? Maybe. So, it would be very interesting to say the least. Hi, Fab Mama. You're very welcome. At the end of the day, we live our lives the way we see fit. As we should. I've spent this last year doing my shows, sporadically of course, learning the ins and outs of being an informer, a content creator, finding myself, learning all the things I missed. So Azul asked, how did that affect my health having hormones in different levels? Honestly, I've always been very, very healthy. Very healthy. I've always had soft skin, thanks to the estrogen. I very rarely had any issues with acne. Ever. I've had maybe 4 zits my whole life. So, as far as normal health concerns, no, I mean, I was quite healthy as a child. The only thing I had growing up was chronic asthma. I had lung problems. And I got over those too. And I will say the treatment for my chronic asthma very, very much so accentuated the testosterone's effect in my body because some of the treatments for chronic asthma are steroids. So, yeah, I hyper masculinized in high school quickly because of those treatments. I'm sure you can all hear my dog. But, yeah, for the most part, quite healthy. All in all, the things I've learned over this last year have been tremendous and amazing at the same time. I've learned so much from my fellow trans brothers, sisters, and non binary siblings. I've learned to be more open. I've learned to embrace my emotions, which now I don't really have much choice. With my last blood test I just got back, my estrogen level is somewhere around 389, and my testosterone is 8. So, yay. And with this upcoming surgery, I know is going to be a huge step for me. It's a step in my heart and in my mind is correcting for myself a massive injustice. Which is why I'm going to do a bonus episode this summer. So that other transgendered folks who are maybe still in their egg, who are still very much closeted, who are scared, I want to be a source of inspiration and comfort. All the negative, horrible things you will ever deal with being a transgender person do not compare with the sheer happiness, euphoria, and just general well-being of finally living your truth. I have never smiled as much as I have in the last year, my entire 41 other years on this planet. I've never had a reason to. Hey, Mom, I'll see you Sunday. And with this surgery coming up, I've already had to have the conversation with my children. I'm going to come home and I'm going to look different. Actually, I'm going to come home and look like I got my ass kicked. Because basically that's what it's going to look like. But I'm going to look different. And I'm going to look different forever. There's no other better way I can put it. And I think they're starting to understand. I'm not going to be the same, but I'm still going to be the same person. And I'm excited. I'm nervous. But I'm also excited. But I know Delina asked, what platform does Mom use? Mom uses my business Facebook page. Thank you, Randolph. Thank you. There's things that I want changed. I don't like my chin. From the front, I think I look wonderful. Well, maybe all but my nose. I do. From the side, not so much. That's really where facial feminization surgery is going to help. It's correcting my profile, if you will. Remember, I took a lot of steroids for my asthma when I was my teen years. Gave me a very strong jaw. Gave me a very, very defined orbital bone, amongst other things. And although 5 more years of estrogen would probably correct a lot of that, I'm an impatient bitch, so hence the FFS. But it's not the only thing they're going to do. Besides FFS, also going to have my Orky, and I'm going to get a little bit of body contouring as well. So fat removal, which I'm very excited about. Hey, any extra assistance I can get in losing weight, I'm all for it. But yeah, this has been a great year. And the one thing I want to put out there to everybody who's been listening to me or who's been following me for this last year, who's tuned into every episode, whether live or after the fact, who's commented or been very supportive, thank you. Thank you for joining me for this journey. Thank you for being here to encourage me or ask questions. Thank you for taking the knowledge that I'm imparting onto you to others and saying, hey, trans people are just people. They're no different than you and I. We want to live happy, simple lives. That's it. Lots and lots of you, and yes, my mom makes a good point. Lots and lots of you have been on this emotional and mental roller coaster. You've seen my ups, you've seen my downs. A lot of you know my story now. Some of you know it more intimately. The world we live in today, I guess, is a little bit better for transgender folks or for folks in the LGBTQIA period than it was when I was young. We've made a lot of headway. We've taken great strides to be accepted and treated equally amongst everyone else. But we have a long way to go. I still can't walk into certain places without being harassed. I can't use public restrooms in a lot of places without being harassed, threatened, or assaulted. There are still people in this world who would rather spend their time hating me than loving others. And that's sad. What a waste of someone's life. There are entire groups of people out there whose sole purpose in existence is to make my life and those like me miserable. Well, your opinion doesn't mean anything to us. We don't care. We just want to exist. I just want to exist. I want to be left alone, allowed to share my life and my journey and my knowledge and everything I've learned and gained through all of my experiences with people who are willing to listen. And that's it. That's all I've ever wanted. So, for this season, my last episode, I want to say how much I love all of you. My family, my wife, my children are all expressly happy with the positive outlook that all of you bring to my lives every time you join. And although there's lots and lots of negative comments that I get all the time, they are vastly outnumbered by your supportive and wonderful comments that you leave all of the time. You've made this journey easier for me. And I'm sure you do the same for others too. So thank you for a great first season. I look forward to releasing my bonus episode where you get to see pre, during, and post FFS surgery. And hopefully healing in time to end that episode for you. I will continue to make content on all of my social media platforms throughout the summer. Some of it may not show my face just because I'm not going to lie, it's going to be bad. Like, it's going to be bad for a while. And then I hope I'll see all of you for the kickoff of season 2, which right now is tentatively planned for the first week in August, but might get bumped to the first week in September. Got a lot of stuff going on here. We're moving. As you can see behind me, there's boxes and stuff being packed up all over the place. So hopefully when I come to you guys in my next first season of, or first episode of season 2, I'll be doing so from a sunny beach. So until then, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for a wonderful, wonderful season. You guys are amazing. Much love to everybody. Take it easy.